Moving to Israel? Awesome. Acclimated to life here? Not as awesome. Welcome to Oleh Chadash Toolbox Talks, where co-hosts Ofer Nachshon, CEO of Aliyah Paveway, and Slivko meet twice a month to discuss with different service providers around the country tips and tricks to help you acclimate to your life here in Israel.
Good evening, everybody. We're here with Shmuel Katz, who's the owner and general manager of Auto King, a full-service automobile service and repair shop located in Beit Shemesh, Israel, since 2016. He's got a monthly column which he produces called Car Talk, and it appears in Connections magazine in Beit Shemesh for the Anglo-speaking community, where he talks about car-related issues. He's also the author of a popular Aliyah Chronicles column, which is a weekly column that appears in the Five Towns Jewish Times, and it's all about him and his family's Aliyah journey since 2006. Before making Aliyah, he was 15 years in the nonprofit management field, working for several yeshivot and charitable organizations. He will be interviewed this evening by Ofer Nachshon, who is the CEO of Aliyah Paveway, and take it away, Ofer.
Thank you very much, Sid. Thank you very much, Shmuel, for coming. I'd like to ask you first, many Olim Chadashim thinking about importing their own car that they have in the States or Europe and bring their car here into Israel. What do you think about that?
Well, first off, thank you for having me. I know what it's like to have been an Oleh myself, and certainly a lot of things I wish I would have known before I came. When you talk about old cars, if it's an old car, not so much of a fan. I think that most of the people that are coming and are talking about bringing their existing car are probably, most of them are usually families that are coming with, let's say, a minivan that they own, and those are expensive here in Israel. Let's say a car up to 5-7 years old that they're talking about bringing in, and the different pitfalls with that. There's really two factors that we're talking about when you're talking about bringing in a car. One's financial, the other one is practical. I'm not a tax expert. I don't really deal with the things like zchuyot, where you get tax benefits of buying a new car here versus importing a car and things like that. But I do work more on the practical side, where I'm the guy who you're going to bring your car to get it serviced and repaired. So let's say like a Honda Odyssey. A Honda Odyssey is a car that is not sold in Israel. It's a wonderful car in America, where lots of people have it. But here, it has to be only brought in as a personal import. There's not a lot of cars like that on the road. So you end up having difficulty sourcing parts. If you want to get brake pads, brake rotors, sometimes it's tough to get them. Toyota Sienna is another example of a car like that. It's not sold here, but that car actually is brought in. There are several companies who for profit bring in Siennas. So there is a little bit better of a supply of parts for a car like that. So one of the factors I ask people when I talk to them before they make Aliyah is, are you going to be traveling a lot? Are you going to be able to bring back some of these missing parts? And if you're going to be traveling a lot, are you going to be able to maybe bring a brake pad, which might be something which is lighter, or you might need to bring in brake rotors, which is a nice heavy piece of metal. It's very heavy, and now you're going to be bringing that in your suitcase. That takes a lot of your luggage allowance. So a lot of these things that you have to consider is, even though it might be financially beneficial, it might not be practical in the long term because parts are expensive and not so easy to get. You have, let's say, I have a customer who has a Town and Country, and it was sold here, imported to Israel, and it says made in Canada on the registration. So he thought he was going to be a smart guy. He's going to go out and buy headlights. He needed new headlights, not the bulb, but actually the whole assembly. Bought them, put them in his suitcase, brought them here, and then we went to put them in the car, didn't fit. He called up Chrysler, and they said, oh, yeah, when we have a car that's exported, we change the design so that you can't stick it to the dealer network in Israel. We want them to sell parts. a lot of times you have compatibility issues with parts that you're buying here for those cars or parts that you're buying there for these cars. So importing a car might not always be the most practical thing because you do end up long-term having problems very often with supply on parts and supplies that your car might be sitting for weeks on end until we get an airlifted part.
Well, thank you. That was very enlightening. I have a question for you. Based on your experience here in Israel, how is the process of buying a car here or owning a car here different from what happens to somebody in America?
Okay. Well, first of all, again, I'm not a tax expert. Leasing is very popular in America, much less popular here because of the tax issues. But there are some people who do lease a car. Everything here is taxed. You have your zechuyot, but everything gets taxed, some of it 100%. So a lot of the things that you're thinking, oh my gosh, in America, it's so much cheaper, a lot of that is because of the taxes. But even things like wear and tear, we have to use a higher quality of oil here in Israel because of the heat. So the synthetic oil that we're using is more than double the cost of the regular motor oil that you use in America. Wear and tear, there's a rainy season in Israel, which means that the rest of the year, which is 7-8 months, are hot and dry. Well, wear and tear, when you have hot desert-like conditions, plastic and rubber deteriorate in those conditions much faster. Tires deteriorate much faster. So we're doing, I think in America or in other places overseas that have higher levels of humidity, that have rain on a regular basis, you might be replacing tires there every 5-6 years, whereas here you're doing it every 2 or 3 years. You also have a lot of road hazard here. Somebody once joked that when you come into the airport, they should just put a sign out that says under construction, because that's the whole country. There's potholes, there's construction debris, there's unpaved roads. There are so many different kinds of road hazard that just don't exist overseas. And therefore, you're going to get a lot more wear and tear to the suspension, a lot more wear and tear to the, again, the tires, the dryness, the dust. So you're going to see issues much more frequently and much more severely than you do in other areas. Even batteries, car batteries, you get 770 Mopar battery that you're getting in Costco, 7-year warranty. Here, the best warranty you're going to get on a car battery is 2 years because the heat and the dryness just sucks out the life of the battery. So there are climate issues that you deal with that change the life cycle. And therefore, whereas overseas you might have, you'll do the oil change a little later, you might not do the maintenance on time. Here, you really need to be very focused on doing everything on time so that you prevent more serious and more expensive issues.
So what do you recommend for someone who's coming for Oleh Chadash in his first year? What do you recommend about purchasing a car?
So again, I'm a used car guy. I can't really talk to you about the newer cars as opposed to, the benefits of owning, etc. But I see in my experience, there's basically 3 different types of people who come here, really 4. One comes and doesn't get a car. Public transportation here is awesome. If you're living in a major city, and I know that I have a vested interest in people owning cars because I make money only when they need to repair them or service them. But I often tell people that you're not best advised if you live in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv and your job is there, might not pay to get a car. You might be best served to take the buses, rent a car for Chol Hamoed, rent a car when you're doing a trip, and otherwise, who needs the expense? There are those people who will rent the first year because they want to see how everything works out and how their needs are for a car. How much driving am I doing? How many kilometers am I making? What kind of car do I feel comfortable? They don't want to make a decision right when they get here. So they'll rent, and that is an expensive process, but it helps you clarify what your needs are so that you can make a more informed decision when the time is a year or 2 years further. Then there are those who decide that they want to buy a car right off the bat, and they want to own that car, and that's going to be their car that they have for a while, whether it's a brand new car, whether it's a late model 3-4 years old, whether it's a much older. These are all things that are really determined by financial issues and budget. So it's more personal to each and every person and family on what their needs are going to be and what they can afford. But there are those people who say, I want my car that I'm going to have long term within the first month. And those people will then either work through an agent. There are some very good agents, and like everything else, some not so great agents. They might go to a garage like us and say, hey, can you help me find a car? Or they'll go to the dealer and buy a brand new car using their rights. All are legitimate ways. Or they'll try and find one themselves, finding something online. We always tell everyone, when you buy a used car, find somebody who has a mechanic they like, get it checked out before you buy it, just to see if there's any obvious issues that you don't see. But those people will buy that car. The fourth person, he's going to buy, or they're going to buy a clunker. And when I say a clunker, they're going to buy a car that's, if they have like, let's say 3-4 kids, they're going to buy a 5, a 7-seater that's 12, 15 years old. They're going to buy it very cheap. They know it's a used car. They know they're going to spend some money on maintenance, and they're going to use that car for 18 months instead of a rental. And they're calculating that it'll be much cheaper to buy that car quickly, use it, even if it's going to cost them money in maintenance. And then again, in that year and a half, to make that informed decision on what car do I want to be my, not forever car, but my longer term car. Once I'm settled in, once I know I'm staying in the city that I chose, where I'm living, what I'm doing, instead of having to change my plans because my situation didn't fall out exactly as I thought it would right away. So you have a couple of different ways that people go, and it's really personal to them. So they can reach out to people who are here, who are in this business, car agents, car dealers, mechanics, all people who are happy to help and say, hey, listen, these are my circumstances. What do you advise in my situation?
Okay, thank you. Another question. Owning a car has got a lot of side things that you have to do when you have the car. Can you briefly talk about the licensing, registration process of
Sure.
what it is to own a car?
Okay, when you buy the car, if you're buying from the dealer, they'll take care of the first year registration. But like every other place, you have to pay for your license plate. That's the registration. So every year they send you in the mail a blue form, and that form has your renewal on it, and you pay it either online or at the post office or at your bank. Most people don't actually get the form in the mail because the mail service here is wonderful. And therefore, there's an option also to pay it online. And then you could print out the registration once you've gotten the payment done. And you pay that annual fee. It's a tax for the privilege of owning a car. The older the car is, the lower the tax. As you own the car, let's say towards its 20th year, I think it's 18 years, you pay the tax twice a year, and it's half of the cost of a full year. But every year you have to pay. It's a license and registration, renews every year on the same date, and it's not so hard to do the licensing and registration at all. Online at the bank, it's really very simple process.
So how much it costs to maintain a car here in Israel?
So maintaining a car depends on how old the car is. If you're buying a new car with no miles on it or no kilometers, it'll cost you for your annual service, depending on what kind of car it is, how big the engine is, what kind of oil it needs. It's probably going to cost you between 5, 6, up to 900 shekels for the annual maintenance, plus your licensing, which could be anywhere from, if it's a new car, 1,400 to 2,200 shekels. And that's basically, if you're a heavy use driver, well, then you might be paying for brakes in that first couple of years. If you're doing just local errands and a low use driver, then you're probably not going to have wear and tear issues because you're not going to have a lot of mileage on it. When you're talking about an older car, let's say 4 or 5 years old, So that car will need a little bit more attention. It probably has some kilometers on it. You might end up needing to do 2 services a year. Service for an older car usually has less, I don't want to say fancy, but not as expensive of an oil, of a grade of oil. So that might be from 400 to about 700 shekels, again, depending on the age and size of the engine. You'll also be paying, again, your registration, but that'll probably be closer to anywhere from 1,100 to 2,000. You'll have to be doing the test. You'll be doing things like brakes, which again vary from car to car. If it's just brake pads, then it could be 450 up to about 600. If it's rotors, it could be 1,000 to 2,000. All these different things. If the car's a few years old, you're going to need to do a battery. That can be anywhere from 5 to 1,300, depending on the size of the battery and the technology. So there's different things. As the car gets older, you buy a clunker, or what they call a jalopy. In the old country, well, you're going to be spending more every year. Of course, you spent less to buy the car. So if you're buying a new car at, let's say, 160,000 shekel, and you're spending less every year, and you're buying a used car for 40,000 shekel, and you're spending more a year, you're probably still coming out ahead with the older car, but you're going to have to see me more often because you're going to need to have repairs done. So that's the balance. It depends on the kind of car, on what the status of it is. Older cars more, newer cars less.
Okay, you just mentioned test. Can you elaborate, explain a little bit more about that?
Sure. The annual test starts when the car is 3 years old. The first 3 years, the car is covered. After 3 years, every year, and you can start doing it 2 months earlier prior to the expiration of the registration, as long as you've paid the next year's fee, up till the registration expiration date. So you have a 60-day window in order to do it. You got to take the car to a licensed agent, a test center, which is a licensee of the government of the state of Israel. And you got to pay, it's 100 shekels or so fee for them to do a test. And they will check the roadworthiness of the car. They're going to check emissions. They're going to check if your wipers are good. They're going to check if your turn signals are working. They're going to check if your suspension is in good working order. If the brakes stop the car, they'll test if the battery's secured properly. They're going to do a whole bunch of different things. At the end of the test, you get a little sticker, you put it on your windshield, and you're good for a year. Some people don't like going to the test themselves, and they might pay their mechanic. We do this all the time. They pay our guy a fee. We charge a fee for it. We pay the 100 shekel to the testing center, and the customer pays us when they pay the bill. And then we charge an hour labor fee for our guy to take it to the test and do the test for you. But you don't have to use us. One of the benefits of going to your garage before you do the test is that they'll probably check out the car and try and spot anything that is an automatic fail. Oh, there's a glass missing from the turn signal. Oh, the brakes are worn out. Oh, the suspension has a tear in one of the steering bands. All these different things that can happen, we'll see it first, and that'll save time and aggravation of having to go back and forth and back and forth. But it's an annual thing. It's twice a year when the car gets, I think it's 18 years old, and it's a roadworthiness test that you have to do. Other states, in other countries, let's say like in New York, state of New York, your mechanic does it. In New Jersey, you do it, I think, every 2 or 3 years, but you have to go to New Jersey's testing center. In Illinois, I think it's just emissions. In California, I think you got to go to their, every place has a different. Here in Israel, it's every year when the car is, starting from when the car is 3 years old. It's a licensee of the government. It's the official testing center. Some cities only have one testing center based on population. So Beit Shemesh has 1. Jerusalem has, I think, 3. Tel Aviv probably has like 5. So it depends on how big the city is and how many different places there are for it.
So from your experience, what kind of brand of cars do you recommend to buy here in Israel?
So it's hard to answer that question because I can't say what I don't recommend. I don't want to get sued. Generally, we have what we call our favorites. Now, I'm not knocking other cars. In, let's say, America, American cars are awesome. And there are some American cars that here are great. But American cars are designed for North America. And for some reason, although they're great cars, they're a little more expensive to repair because we got to bring the parts in. And long term, a lot of the models don't hold up as well. Great cars, but you do spend a little more on repairs. Some of the European cars aren't made for this desert climate. They don't really work. In our experiences, the cars that we really like are the Asian cars and the ones that are, let's say, affiliated with Asian manufacturers. So, to name a couple of brands, even though I probably shouldn't, the Toyotas, the Hondas, the Kias, the Hyundais, even though some of them are made, let's say, in Czechoslovakia, but that's really, we consider that an Asian car. Mazdas, a lot of these cars are, when they're made in Asian countries, they're really held up well to this climate. That's not to say a Chevy's a bad car. We have some Chevys that are on the road here, 200,000-300,000 kilometers. They're great, but you're going to spend a little more to repair them. The Asian cars are the bigger sellers here. When a car is more popular, supply and demand, that means a lot of people looking for parts. And used parts. And that means there's going to be more people willing to sell them. So sometimes you'll get stuck with like I said, the Town and Country. It's a nice car. I had one on, I lived in America. But to get a fuel pump here for that customer's car, he had to bring it in from America. He couldn't drive his car for 6 weeks. It happens much less frequently for a Toyota or a Honda because those cars are sold here. That's to exclude a Toyota or Honda, which was made for the North American market, put on a lift, brought here, because very often those parts are hard to get. So you'll have, let's say, spark plugs that somebody will buy on Amazon for a Kia Forte 2016. It'll bring it in. It'll go, look, you wanted to charge me the equivalent of $30 a spark plug. I bought them for $6.95 at AutoZone. But that car is not the same car. And because it's not the same car, it's built in a different factory. So you're looking at different spark plugs. And guess what? You now just brought in a very nice paperweight for your desk because we can't use it in the car. So we're looking for the ones that we like the best are the Asian cars that are sold here. We understand if people bring them in, we'll service anything. We work with all the cars. But for the person who's looking, what should I do and hasn't made a commitment yet and hasn't made the purchase, what's the smartest move for me? We're big fans of buying here and getting an Asian car that's going to satisfy your needs.
Shmuel, thank you very much for sharing your insights, your expertise. I've learned a lot, even as somebody who's driven here for close to 20 years. There are things that I didn't know, and I thank you for clarifying it. For those of you who are listening, Shmuel is one of our sapakim, one of our trusted and vetted suppliers. And if you have any questions on automotive issues, please feel free to go to our website and speak to him directly. And if you have any other questions about Aliyah or Klita, we are here to make your absorption that much easier. So please don't hesitate to visit our website, speak to us, speak to some of our sapakim, let them know that you're coming via us, and we'll be more than happy to help you. And we wish you all a good evening.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks for joining. As always, Oleh Chadash, we're here to help you. AliyahPaveway.com.